You're winning. Well, hello, family. Welcome to another episode of Epic Understanding. And tonight, I guarantee you're winning, especially if you have your listening ears on. Now, if you read the bio or the commentary, you saw a phrase there that says, "We raise our daughters, but spoil our sons." Now, that is a common phrase in the Black community, but the ideology is not limited to the Black community. As a matter of fact, um, Italian mothers were made famous for the way that they spoil their sons with the show Everybody Loves Raymond. And as a matter of fact, um, in China, boys are valued so much that um, female children are often murdered due to the one child policy. So, what is it about having a boy versus a girl that is so important? And I wonder what that pressure might do once it met the sin of slavery. These are the kinds of questions and the kind of pressure that Virgie May had to deal with. Now, who's Virgie May? Well, I have Virgie May's voice here, and perhaps he can let us know. Hello, Imam. How are you?
Hello, audience. I brought with me a book that I was known as a bookworm in my town, and this is a psychoanalytic book called "The Art of Unknowing: the Dimensions of Openness in Analytic Therapy." So a lot of my references you won't actually see, but I will be pretty much informed by much of that material. And I think the role of women in society really has been a cursed role. And most scriptures, not scriptural, let's say the scriptural interpretations, but theologians refer to as hermeneutics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that hermeneutics towards women has been a very jaundiced, disjointed, sick person. Now, when you get to Africans in the Americas, it's to the 40,000 power. And when you get to the particular clan of Africans in America, those who come from the 2,000 mile, 3,000 mile square slave ship called America, plantation life, it becomes even more of a pronounced problem.
Mm.
And I'm just so delighted to be able to hear to unravel and to stop unknowing and let's know. And I
Yeah.
think cut down on the rage, the anger. Well, first, we're not just angry, we are enraged. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
acted out daily in our homes, on the streets, and our life and action. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
honored to be Virgin May's boy who happened to have studied somewhere I read a few books and studied myself for almost 35 years at least of psychoanalysis, and I've analyzed myself. And the best analysts I have found that ask the right question after 30 some years of therapy. Analysis, not therapy. Therapy, I'm not a big stickler for therapy. I believe in the analytic method. With this problem we're standing has been Coach Love.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I am just absolutely honored to have you as my guest and honored to be doing these investigations, these episodes with you. This is a series that we've been doing that really unwraps American history through your eyes and your family.
Yes.
Is what
A
we
window into American history, or
Yeah.
as the great historian John Hope Frank said, mirror to America. but really, it's a little deeper than that, Dr. Franklin. It's actually the probing of the psyche. And I'm not so
Mm,
more interested in a mirror to America. I want a mirror to to our people, because I believe if we look at ourselves in the mirror, we would thus heal America.
mm-hmm,
If we work on ourselves, I think we are the epi-American. I think we are the absolute archetype of America. In fact, our beginnings as a people
mm-hmm.
is American. Everything was erased, so we started afresh. We're new people. God made us over again, and we took on a lot. Much of us, we're the most unique people on earth. I don't want to get long philosophical because I want to get to my topic. And you know what
Okay.
I'm saying? Somewhere I read. Now I'm
Somewhere
just
you read. So, for the family members who are just joining us in this series, I just want to tell you a little bit about Imam Councilman Alfred Mohammed. Although he is the son of Virgin May, his life was blessed as a very young boy. As a matter of fact, he studied under Martin Luther King Sr. Now, this means he studied under the man who made the man, Martin Luther King Jr. So that in itself kind of shakes my soul, because when you get the opportunity to be mentored by someone who knows how to mentor and um, receive that kind of history and that kind of value being poured into you, that's special in itself. So you're just going to have to tell us a little bit about how you started getting in his car somehow and being tutored as a preacher a little bit. So I want to hear about
Well,
that.
it was sort of sporadic, because I first met him when I was a little boy. My mother introduced me to him. He had come to Virginia Seminary and College. The great Honorable Reverend Dr. Vernon H.W.B. John. That in itself is enough. He was the president of Virginia Seminary and College in Lynchburg, Virginia. Later on, I believe it maybe after that, he became the pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. So
Hmm.
any preacher worth anything wanted the opportunity to preach at Virginia Seminary
Okay.
because Dr. John was exacting. And as a little boy, my mother took me, he spoke that day. And I wouldn't say I was really mentored by him, but I met him. And later on, I would run into him from time to time and he would talk to me. There was no talking back like, a lot of young people do. It was none of that. You sat and you listened to him. So one day I said, I was at the Baptist Ministers Conference. And I said, Dr. King, can I get a ride with you? Yeah, boy, come on. You know what this is? I said, yeah. And I said, yes, Doc. Well, I know what this is. We just talk. We talk. We talk. It was to, it really, to say being mentored or tutored, it means you had to shut up
Mm-hmm.
and just listen. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we'll be silence. And I'll never forget one time I was riding from 145th Street, 125th Street. Yes. And I said, Dr. King, something. He said, well, wait, boy, I get to think. And he didn't talk for about 45 minutes. Then he came back with whatever it was. So even in his silence was mentoring. I think someone is knocking at my door. Excuse me. Yes, I'm doing a TV program. Hold on, hold on. Excuse me a moment.
Well, this is live for you. So I invite everyone, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And I greatly appreciate that if you would do that. You're welcome to ask about history. You're welcome to ask about religion. Imam is a pastor. I'm sorry, no, he is a preacher as well as an imam. So he's gone to seminary school and he certainly studied and currently is a Muslim. So he's an imam. As a matter of fact, Imam, what is your ranking? Um,
Well,
in,
I am probably at the ranking as the number two Muslim Imam in America and the association that came out of the Nation of Islam, which included Minister Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm, Muhammad Ali, and those people. And I am currently probably the number 2 person, I'd say probably I am, to Imam Warqin Muhammad II, as I was an assistant to Imam Warqin I, who was the one who kind of reshaped the Muslims in America. And he's largely responsible for my remaking, in that I was a Nation of Islam member, that basically we were kind of taught, we put down the church, we had really, that was not the Elijah Muhammad, but we generally didn't have any respect for Christianity. And so when the transformation took place, I really began to seriously study African American Christians in particular, and Christianity in general, because I wanted to know, if I'm going to leave a religion, then I have to know what I've left. I have to know why I have, because I have to answer to people. People who asked me that. They knew me. My Sunday school teacher, they wanted to know, you know. And I said I was transformed, not with a twinkling of an eye, but I've been transformed, and I just read scripture differently. Somewhere I read. But the point is, I have never changed my essence in believing in an all-wise, true, and living God. And I may perceive that God differently than others, but I mean, it's God. And I move very deeply by spirituality. And I might have said in this program, I don't know what to say to you or not. I said the pews get it, but the pulpit is slow. And I spent the most of my life trying to educate, latter part of my life, educating preachers. One of the very close people I didn't mention, I would say I had a casual mentoring with Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. I've been in the company of Dr. Luther King Jr. But one of the people that I really was mentored by was the Reverend Gardner Calvin Taylor. Now, I spent long hours, even taking his course in the art of preaching. And we used to turn on conversations for hours. And for those who don't know Dr. Gardner Taylor, he's considered America's best preacher. And he, in a book called The Preacher King, this scholar by the name of Elisha says that Dr. King is a composite of his father, Daddy King, Sandy F. Ray, and Dr. Gardner Taylor. I would tell you that there never have been anybody who walked in a pulpit more eloquent and more moving. I was told to keep my voice down. I have roommates. But I am just moved by those people. Those are the people, the great influence, the art of preaching, but really being a first-rate intellectual.
I see.
You had to think. They didn't have you. We couldn't come around and just can hoop. You had to know something. And that was my foundation. But God has blessed me to meet a lot of people along the way. And I studied. I want to make this plain. I'm troubled by the current generation. Very troubled. Because I think about 60 years ago, as a strategy to undermine us, the continuity has been broken, where we were taught as a people, everybody's independent, everybody's entitled to his opinion, and we lost tradition. Now, every other people in America, wonder why they're getting ahead and we ain't, they have traditions. And as I told a young man a few days ago, his father is a undertaker, but father's also a lawyer. I said, let me ask you this so-and-so. He would remain anonymous. I said, what fed you? He said, my dad is embalming business. I said, well, it came to me, not you get an embalmer's license. He said, I'm going to apply to be an embalmer and be a lawyer. Because, everybody else has tradition. Okay. I know people who are surgeons, and now daddy owns a butcher shop. If push comes to shove, the family business, this guy can go and do anything other than surgery. He can cut meat, stuff with his dick. We have to learn that. We haven't learned that. Now I'm going to shut up. I've preached enough. I am ready to be grilled on the grill of the great Coach Love. And I'm calling you by your mother's name, your mother's daughter. Because you definitely are. God knows I'm gonna fly out to St. Louis to meet your mother because she has produced a phenomenal person.
Oh, thank you. You know, my mother is my heart. I
I
love
know.
her so. I love her so.
I got to meet her. I'm gonna before well at the bottom of in the first in December. I'm gonna come when I go to Chicago. I'm gonna come to see your mother. Then I come see you.
You
'Cause
know
I want
what?
to see
I'll
where
take it. I
I
will
want to
take
see
it.
where you're coming from. I want to see. I got to see where you're coming from. They said we used to the old days to say where you coming from. I want to know where you're coming from. So I want to know where you're coming from because you
You
got
know
some good
what?
stuff.
I honestly can say I have a lot of my mother's personality, that kind of natural love, that natural joy, that comes from my mom for
And
sure.
you and very quick with it, very brave, and very true in your ability. I mean, it's you have the acumen. So with that smile, you can just pull everything out. I'm glad I haven't committed a crime because I've been ready to confess. Yeah, I did it. Just mommy.
Oh my goodness. All
Some
right.
people
All
have
right.
that ability, and you do. Okay, let me keep my voice down. I got my preacher voice. Let me get my interview interviewee voice.
Okay, I don't want to get you in any kind of trouble with your family there. That said, I do want to remind the family that you've been at the feet of Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes.
You know, I want to people to understand why you have the nickname of the real Forrest Gump, you know.
And it was through no plan of my own. I was just happened to be in Madison, Wisconsin. And someone said, Fannie Lou Hamer. I met Fannie Lou Hamer before, not really close up. And I walked into the room and she said, come and sit right here. I said, there's no more room. The place was crowded, a little small room,
Mhm.
maybe 40 people. And I sat
Mhm.
right at her feet and I was just a silent. I wanted her to know the body language. I'm not going to disturb you. I'm not going to move. And the same thing happened with me and uh but not me, but the great Gwendolyn Brooks and myself. Another time I was in the room, she said to me, come and sit here.
Mhm.
And I just sat very silent and didn't disturb her. And she
Mhm.
could see that I was awed by her. And she said some very complimentary fiction about me. He said, one day he's gonna be a great writer. Now she said, you're gonna be a great writer. I was, and she intuited because I was writing at the time, and I at that point I was kind of aspiring less to be a preacher, more to be a writer. Actually, God knows I didn't ever really want to be a preacher. It was until recently that I surrendered to being a preacher. That was the
Wow.
last I wanted to be because
Wow.
for a multiplicity of reasons.
Wow. And part of the reason why you're doing these interviews with me is so that you can bridge the gap between Christianity and Muslims and Buddhism, and really to reach into specifically the Black community so that you can heal the hearts. Is that right?
That is right. I'd
Mhm.
say African American. I said this is a big preachers conference. I mean, some of the greatest African American preachers were there in Cincinnati during the year of the Jubilee a couple of years ago. I won't name this preacher, but I guess he succeeded. Well, I'm going to tell you who he succeeded because then you know what I'm talking about. But
Well,
he somehow figured out that he was not dealing with a lightweight,
mhm,
and he called at 3 o'clock in the morning, getting a $5,000 honorarium,
mhm,
and he was going to be taken to the airport right after he spoke. They
mhm.
decided he didn't want to deal with Brother Muhammad. Because
Ah,
I know Christianity in its history thoroughly. I know the African American preacher thoroughly. And as I said at that conference, I don't care whether the black preacher got a pork chop in his mouth or a bean pie in his hand. Most don't know what they're dealing with. And,
mhm.
there are few. But I have had the company of some of the great preachers, the thinkers. And I've also been with Reverend Hoopenholland, too. I mean, I know him well. I don't disrespect the profession or because you have to understand that water seeks its own level. Some people, all they want is a moving heart, and that'll get them through the week. May
Okay.
not get them up the hill, but to get them through the week.
Mm-hmm. All
And
right.
people,
All right. Well, fair enough. Reverend Hoopenholler, you cracked me up. Well, I'm going to tell y'all, we making claims and naming names. No, I'm I won't be mischievous. I won't be mischievous. Yes, I will. A little bit. A little bit. But that
well,
said,
I think a lot of people, intellectuals, don't know the role of religion and faith in people's lives. And I have been critical, but as I studied, thus far by faith, you don't know what sustains people. You don't know what people are going through. And you
okay.
can't say what float their boat or what cup of tea they should drink.
Mm,
I believe God determines that with our own consciousness. And so I do want to bridge the gap because I
mm-hmm,
know that when we came here, we came, most of them were not Christians, only 2%, very few. Few Christians that came out of Angola. Basically, we came from different faiths, and there were a lot of Muslims on that boat. But when we got here,
mm-hmm,
we had made a decision that after being told that you are not even a human being, we looked
mm,
up. So over my head, I heard music. There must be a God somewhere. Now remember, the first early period of it, so I'm not going to go years so the historians can pull out the book. Oh, it's this years. I'm not into that. I don't collect figures. But I will say that the early years of our people, we were told you're the beast of the field, or they thought they had reduced us to the beast of the field.
mm,
And so they told them, don't worry about God. You'll see God through us. God is not even concerned about it. You worship God by serving us.
mm.
So I'm very careful not to hurt people's faith. Sometimes I won't answer that question. They'll ask me, how did you end up being a Muslim? And I will just say, pray for me.
Mm.
Because I may want to give them hope that one day I'll shake their hand and become what they are. I'm not going to
Okay.
dash their faith and argue with them about what God has revealed to them. He didn't reveal it to me. As bad as a young preacher went to church and he wanted to take this church over. I'm going to give you a few of the preachers are very interesting people. You go into church and you say amen louder than the pastor, generally you'll be ushered out of the church. But this young man was supposedly bold enough to tell the preacher, God told me that I am to be the pastor of this church. He said, well, I just got a recent message from God, and he gave me a pistol too. And he said, if you don't get the hell out of this church, I'm going to send you to God. So,
Okay, I think you mischievous. I'm in
no,
good company.
I'm truthful. I want to tell people, you will never get me condemning preachers. You will never get me condemning Christians. I've seen many people's lives transformed by Christianity. I still get tears in my eyes when I see people baptized.
Mm-hmm.
They go through that transformation. And how did it feel when I came out of the wilderness? So am I going to deny that? By the same token, if I see somebody converted to Al Islam, I'm going to see it. And I would tell you that the dean of Morehouse College, I was at an installation of a pastor, and I was shocked to hear Lawrence Goddard say, the doors of the church is open. Maybe one would like to be a Buddhist. Maybe one would like to be a Muslim. Maybe one would like to accept Christ. The doors of the church is open. And I was so scared. I thought, they're going to run this guy out of here. And he was the officiant at this installation. So he was great. And I had to say the prayer. So I said, wow, man, I guess I'm in a safe place. So it went out well, because,
Wow.
we are funny as a group. Preachers in private, we can be warm and very loving to each other. But we think in order to keep hegemony over the people, we have to say things. I'm one of the people that break those rules. I'm not trying to take your flock. Anyway, we're far off subject. Let me get to Virgil May's daughters.
Good. So your mother wanted you to be a preacher, and that's how you actually started down this road. Our very first program was titled Virgin May's Dream and Virgin May's Nightmare. And in that, you revealed um, some of the pain that you had with your mother. Um, it got to the point where you felt like she hated you because she tried to
Well,
kill
I
you.
tell you, it was an actual fact. She didn't imply, she didn't suggest it. She said it explicitly. I hate you. For what
Mm,
good you are, I should have crushed you when you came out of me.
mm,
And she
mm.
used very explicit terms.
Very
And she with,
fair
with,
enough.
with, with her facial expression, she
Mm-hmm.
said many times, and several times, she tried to send me back to the Creator.
Mm. But initially, you were the apple of her eye, correct?
Yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
The
Now,
golden child.
hmm?
The golden child. You know, I was just thinking here just a little earlier. My first memory was being in the living room at 601 Winston Ridge Road, and my mother gathering all the family and telling them to be quiet. My little man is going to preach.
Wow.
I wasn't even 4 yet. I don't know whether I had gotten the call. I don't think I'd gotten the call. I got the call much later.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
call is sort of an intercalling. But she gathered the children and my older brother, my sisters, everybody was home. And they had to listen to whatever I had said. I don't know what I said, but I mean, whatever. They
But
thought
she
I,
called them to listen to you.
yes,
I pointed that out because she had love initially for you and some of her other sons, but she did not like her girls.
that is true.
Ever. She didn't like them.
Now, we're going to go through the list, and some of them are listening. Some of my nieces and nephew, one of my nieces has gotten great revelation. She understands her father greatly as a result of that. Some of you all, my nieces and nephews, are going to be very pained because you
Mm,
saw my mother through other eyes. She was a little different with grandchildren, but
okay.
when you want me to start recounting the seven sisters, isn't that something? Seven sisters, and I will recount them each in their relationships to my mother.
I do. And I find it interesting that she herself was the daughter of a slave. Her first child was a boy. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then she had how many girls in a row?
Well, she had a boy, then she had a girl, then she had a girl, then she had a girl.
So
And
she had,
let's see, yeah, and then she had two other girls that died.
but she
Then
had three girls in a row.
yes,
She had three girls in a row, and none of those girls she was pleased with. She didn't like any of them.
one, one, the yes, I think after my sister, I think Jean or Claudine, which I don't know too much of history, then she fell in love with one of my sisters.
Oh, she did.
Yeah,
Which
I want
one?
to go. I want to go through these sisters. So, because I want to talk a little bit about how home life is and the role, the
Right.
psyche arrangement of people.
And we're
So,
going to go. We're going to go through all of them. We are. I'm just kind of laying the foundation to see how many and who and where, if that makes any sense.
yes, she only had one that she really loved.
Oh wow.
Her methodology is great. Now remember, my mother, my mother was not raised by her mother.
Who raised your mom?
My mother was abandoned by her mother,
Okay.
and my uncles were taken with my grandmother and lived with their old slave masters, and she left the girls with my grandfather.
Oh, how interesting.
Yes,
How
that is
interesting.
very key to understand the psyche of my mother. I think it's almost unique. I don't
Hmm.
know of many other people. I've studied the literature. There are not many people that like that.
You may or may not know the answer to this question, but did your grandfather have sex with your mother?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. That's what a psychoanalyst told me. In
Mhm.
fact, I shared an analyst. Wow, it's interesting. I later on found out later that Whitney Houston and I shared the same analyst
Mhm.
for a brief time. She was more of a family therapist. She came to the house and spent about 9 hours with us. And she said to me, "You know, Mr. Muhammad, your grandfather, I now know the rest of the family going to have that. And it's very difficult for me to real deal with this. But she said your grandfather, and it would logically kind of follow that he had sex with your mother.
Mhm.
And that's why she became sexually a molester herself. It's
Mhm.
learned behavior.
Mhm. It would seem to be so. So your
I'm very
mother was
pained this time. I'm very pained talking about this because I just know the weight that it was have on other family members, but nevertheless, I get to tell the truth. I'm going to keep going. Okay. So if I break out crying, which I hope I won't, I hope I'll be able to contain myself. But because I'm telling you, I feel like tears when I think about this, because I'm reliving in my spirit what happened first to my grandmother,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
was a painful situation,
Mhm.
and this idea that women are cursed,
Mhm.
and she didn't want anything to do with it. She didn't say that was implied because she had a mother who was crippled and was repeatedly raped by this captain on the plantation named Davis. And
Mhm.
she had a withered hand. She was handicapped, and he used to burn her regularly. So, what
Mhm.
could my grandmother, Lula Nallen, think about womanhood? So she was excited by her boys. And the boys came last, I believe, the last two boys of her children. So she just left my grandfather with those girls. And if he
Mm.
didn't have, and it has happened very commonly in families, this is also told in literature, an Invisible Man, which I urge people to read, a guy by the name of Jim, fictional character called Jim Trueblood. These are very painful things to see. We wonder why people ready to go and rage over Robert Kelly. But, he says sister molested him, but I understand also the precursor to molestation was, well, what I see is mother molested. She used to kiss him with a lipstick every day, go and get a cup of coffee, kiss him. That's very suggestive. Whether she actually had penetratable sex with him, one doesn't have to have penetration to have sex with
Mhm.
that child. But as you said, well, painfully, I have to say, probably my grandfather did. Because
Mhm.
in the order, and I've seen some of these people who really felt that their children belong to them sexually. And there's taboo and totem by Sigmund Freud. If there's not that taboo in the family, and
Mhm.
remember, they took all of that away from us. They breeded us. In many cases, forced African Americans to shame them to have sex with their mother. So it
Mhm.
wasn't too far tradition and breeding people. When you breed people, you didn't care anything about them. First, you didn't believe they were human beings.
Right.
So if they're not human beings and you need to reproduce, they
Mhm.
didn't call us anything, but they call what they call it. They call a man a buck and a woman a wench.
Mm.
If you read the runaway slave books or read the actual literature runaway slave, you see a black wench about 5'3", well dressed wench, a black buck. So we were referred in animalistic terms. So what could we do but internalize those terms?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so to answer your question, I painfully love my grandfather, knew him. I'm told I look very much like him. I knew him. I'd seen him. I had a lot of affection for him. It's very hard for me to think about it, but I have to be a scientific person and say he probably did.
And you want to know something? When you know better, you do better.
Right.
And so when your grandfather, was a particular age, he may not have had the self-worth and the insight to understand the connection between having sex with his girls that might have not been taught to him because he probably saw different and didn't maybe not understood how wrong it really was.
And probably remember these people were marginal Christians. And I said marginal because they had an emotional Christianity. They didn't have these taboos in them. It was all well as long as I believe in Jesus Christ and I accept him as my personal savior. I got baptized, got the gift of the Holy Ghost. Well, when you go home, you may do anything because okay, well, I'm a sinner anyway. So hey, what difference is one sin and another? And I have a need. I mean, I could see person rationalizing it unless they were explicitly taught not to. And there's a lot of incest in our family, from male and female, and is not talked about. And is the 50,000-ton elephant in the room.
It is. I suppose what I'm attempting to highlight there is that on the plantation, the family structure was not girded up.
No, it was undermined. It was deliberately undermined.
Yes, yes,
Once you
yes.
have a family structure, if you have a family structure, you could build up some type of organization, and eventually that organization could come against you. So it
Mhm.
was very necessary to disorganize the family. And
Right.
it collective disorganization. It was planned, it was scientific. The people that put this system together was no fools. They
Mhm.
and again I invite people to the scholarship to read Orlando Patterson's Slavery and Social Death. If you read that, you see all slave systems, whether it's been America or not, is about degrading and taking people's humanity.
Exactly. So if that is put into your heart, put into your mind, put into your spirit, the idea of, sleeping with one's child is not so far-fetched, particularly when your brothers and sisters might be cooked. I mean, there are recipes for,
Right. Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Yes. This is right. And that's how we ought to understand that is that when you've been reduced to an animal,
Mhm.
what would you expect but animalistic urges?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons for faith. And I think even the people who were teaching Christianity to us, they didn't put any emphasis on that. They didn't put any emphasis on shame. It was continuous. I mean,
Mhm.
they continuously tell you were degraded. So we had a little sense. I will say certain cultures that came out of West Africa. I don't want to particularize them. Had prohibitions against all these West African societies. And, this bothers me so greatly about our so-called intellectuals. Most of them know nothing about West Africa at all. They know nothing about African
Mhm.
history. And they tend to pontificate and just say all kinds of ignorant things about Africa. I happen to have studied West African history. Now, if you ask me about East African history, I probably get a C. But if I were examined by a doctoral student right now on West African history, I would pass. Not with flying colors. May have to have an open book exam, but I pretty much know the outline of West Africa. What happened
Okay.
before the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, that's fair enough. And I'm so thankful that we had an opportunity to lay some groundwork before we moved into how your mother actually felt about each one of her daughters. Because what I don't want the audience to villainize Virgie May.
No. And that's
She,
what I don't want either, because I must tell you, that's my mother.
mhm,
And it took me many years to say that. And I have a profound love, even deeper love for her after 30 odd years or more of really excavating her. And one of the people that really has helped me tremendously is you.
aw,
I'm telling the
thank you
most.
so much.
Because what happens is, when we have problems, then you have to have modeling. and I
Mhm.
see your feminine glory. Your I don't want to get all these psychological terms, but it's healing. And I've dealt with a lot of sisters, and I'm ready to call Kevin Samuels out of the grave to help me. But uh, uh, so let's just say to talk with you who have a very healing spirit is it's redemptive. It's very
Well,
redemptive.
thank you.
And you
Thank you
tell your
so much.
mother that I said she raised a very powerful, sweet daughter. And
Oh, wow.
that smile is worth at least $2 billion. You with that smile, you got more out of me to confess than the greatest detective. I think you got more than the FBI got out of President Trump.
Oh, oh. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That listen, that's too hot for TV right there. So Virgie May had her first daughter. And what was her name?
Corrine.
Horeen. Oh wow, that's very pretty. Do you know the origins of that name?
I think Corrine is named after one of my aunts. I don't know. I knew it, but I'm kind of repressed it. I can't. I know I think she was named after one of mine.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Very well. Very well.
that was the first
And
daughter.
that was the first daughter. And how was that relationship?
Well, I was telling somebody today how we can't. It's hard to describe myths about what your mother tell you. And it
Mm-hmm.
was only when I was 32 years old that I began to understand that my mother had basically lied or created a myth about Corrine. She
Oh,
had told us that she was crack brained or basically retarded.
okay.
And for many years until I was 32, one day I'll never forget, I was working and I called her up. And after that conversation, I concluded my mama long gone. I didn't grow up with Corrine. She was about, she had a son about my age. But I
Okay.
said, this woman is not insane. This is a very smart woman. And I
Okay.
concluded that actually she is the best of us. A very even tempered, very compassionate person, a very loving person, a very forgiving person. And I must tell you, she had a very, very extraordinarily difficult childhood. With
Wow.
my father thinking that she was not his child and
Oh,
probably making passes at her because he didn't think she was his child.
okay.
And she was, and in my heart, the most spiritual of us. And I
Mm,
said that at several passings of her, well, at her uh, son's passing, I said she was the best of us. She's
mm.
more spiritual, more forgiving, and whatever it was, she started early following the law. But let me tell you what church she grew up with
Okay.
Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's father was one of the pastors in my sister's church.
Wow.
Well, and that's a long story too. Too long to get into. But I can tell you this. My sister, what you call, they were part of a breakaway group from the Seventh-day Adventists. They
Okay.
were a synthesis between Judaism, the rituals of Judaism, they followed kosher,
Mm-hmm.
and a branch of Christianity. They were called commandment keepers. And so my
Mm,
sister, I was maybe 7 years, 8 years old. She stopped eating pork, didn't eat shellfish, and she just began to become a person like stopped drinking. Her and all her family got converted to the Sabbath keep.
I see.
But
You
she
know.
was such a sweet woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I later heard all these things about my father and her, because he didn't believe she was his daughter. And my mother, so she was rare because she neither got love from my mother or my father.
When you said that, I must say you that shocked me because throughout our conversations, you never indicated that your father thought had that mindset about any of the children.
Yes, we're gonna get to some of them.
Wow.
And
Oh,
also I have to tell you about my father's complexes. And
okay.
you have brought these things out. I have when psychoanalysts, most of the psychoanalysts don't know enough about it, so they can't even bring these questions up. But you have done it. I'm telling you, God bless you.
Well,
My
thank.
father didn't like light-skinned children.
I see. I see.
So
I was
Corrine
going
was
to ask
very
you what you
light-skinned.
look like.
I think Corrine is, let me see, is Corrine named after my grandmother? My great grandmother? One of his relatives. But he thought she wasn't his child. She's light-skinned.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you who later on was the apple of his
Okay.
eye.
Okay.
We'll go to that next girl.
All right. So she was light skinned. Was she tall or was she in the
She's a
shorter?
little bit on the chubby side, but had a nice smile, a pleasant demeanor, reminded me of one of my aunts called Aunt Mildred. Very even tempered, very forgiving, never vindictive, never mean, very loving. Kind of, oh, well, one of the family members, I just tell you, she was a little stingy. She would come
Okay.
and eat. She would come down and eat our food up when she come because she left her children with us. They grew up with me during the summers. She would never. She would eat when she come to collect her children. She leave no food, but she would eat up our food. So that's the
I
only
see.
thing I say about it. She was
Okay.
definitely set her family centered, and I
Okay.
was not her favorite brother. She liked me because I was like a baby. I mean, she saw me as a baby boy, but you know,
Right.
her favorite. We'll talk about him. Each of my sisters had favorite brothers. And
Okay.
that brother that was our favorite couldn't do no wrong.
Okay.
They wouldn't let you talk about him. So my sister Corrine loved my brother Thomas.
Oh.
And she would tell you in a minute. Now, I had a nickname named Now. She said, now you don't talk about this.
Okay. That's
Sugar
good.
could come to visit her drunk. She didn't tolerate any rest coming to her drunk. She's very rigid, straight Christian.
Mm-hmm.
But Duggar
Mm-hmm.
would come. See, go on over there, Bookie. Duggar, you know you drunk. Okay,
Oh,
Bug, Bug. Her nickname was Bug, and I mean, she was just love. She was crazy about Duggar. That was
that
her thing.
that's kind of sweet that she had so much love for him.
She had
And
all of them when they come to, and we'll get to the rest of them. And every one of them had a favorite brother. And
now, where
that
was Thomas
produced
in relationship to her? Like, if she's the second child, where does Thomas fall?
Thomas fall way down the line. He
Mm-hmm.
is after, let's see. There's two girls in between her, but the next is my sister, who I happen to fall in favor with, my sister Ruth,
Okay,
and that was Daddy's favorite.
I got it.
And my mother hated her.
Mm. And what did she look like?
She was a little darker than Corrine. Corrine was very light skinned, and as
Oh,
I said, I'm telling my daddy's secret. Daddy, forgive me. I'm a doctor. You trained me to be a doctor. You always wanted me to be a doctor, so I'm a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychiatrist by board certification, but I'm a psychiatrist. And I must tell you, Daddy, you didn't like light skinned children, even though you were light skinned. Even though that was a part a lot of people don't understand. These people rejected themselves because that was a part of them they were ashamed of. We never understood the
mm.
complexity of colorism. He was ashamed. They would always talk about that. He didn't like that. He never told me that, but in my studies, I knew he had to be this slave master's grandchild.
Mm-hmm. His mother was light skinned.
Right. He resented that. And
Mm-hmm.
remember, his mother resented light skinned people.
Yes, yes.
So here come my next sister, and she's a bit dark. He would call old black goodney. And I was telling my son, yeah, we can't deal with this. She's not dark. Well, okay, relatively speaking, she was dark. That was his favorite. That's who
Mm.
had my dad wrapped around his finger. She was the one that caused the epiphany in his life to stop drinking. He was going to kill my mother
Oh, oh.
in a drunken fit. and my sister ran across the porch and said, "Put that gun away, Daddy." And he dropped the gun, and they called the police, and that was the end of him drinking. But my mother hated her. People used to tell her in the neighborhood, "Leave her, what, Miss, leave her alone." She hated her. And my grandmother would say, when she tried to beat her, and she said, "I guess I got to leave her alone. Joe said he's gonna make a nurse out of her." And guess what? This is what I want to talk about: ego structure in fathers. That child that has one of the reasons a lot of us can't negotiate institutional life and can't stay on jobs and have problems because we have bad relationship with our fathers. The father is the outer negotiator. The mother is the inner life. So people will walk around with rage with our father, will always have problems being conforming to. And I've had that problem, but I didn't know the subconscious thing. I got you, Coach Love, that I had the ability to stick to institutions, be loyal to institutions, and to learn how to eat some humble pie. Because the father had to negotiate those things. So my father, at an early age, was nurturing my sister Ruth Iona, who grew from a maid to a practical nurse, to a registered nurse, medical surgical nurse at DC General Hospital, later on to St. Elizabeth Hospital, where one of her famous patients was John Hinckley.
Oh.
So that was the one that my mother hated and tried to kill.
Wow. I want to put just a quick pin in Ruth. I'm curious. Your oldest sister, you said that she looked like your Aunt Mildred. Okay?
Yes.
You said that Corrine looked like Aunt Mildred. Was Aunt Mildred related to your mother or your father?
My father.
Wow.
And she, again, was one of the sweetest women on earth.
I asked that question because if your sister Corrine looked like your Aunt Mildred on your father's side, perhaps that rejection from your father was not valid.
It wasn't. I don't know. Yeah, because he loved my Aunt Mildred. Right. But you know, in a drunken rage and a lot of jealousy and a lot of pain, people become irrational.
So
like you brought up, yes, go ahead. You brought up before, my daddy was a hound dog, as you pointed out, and a rascal. And I have to admit that what I'm told he was. And so as a result, you know, a damaged person.
I wanted to see if there was some validity behind your father's thinking. It sounds like there wasn't. Perhaps he was very young at the time and was projecting his behavior onto your mother.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, I'm not going to go 100% with that. My mother may have had some infidelity. I've heard hints of it. I have no real proof of that, but I've heard hints. But who knows what was going on in a dysfunctional relationship. But I do know from testimony of family members, reliable testimony, that my father was a serial whoremonger.
I see.
And family members with aunts, he was in. He was quite Now, of course, when I got the second awakening of him, most of that he had stopped. I never saw any evidence. I guess it, with the exception of you, some analysts tried to get me to see, perhaps you're subconsciously angry with your father. But you know what? I guess when I started to understand a little bit of it, I started making progress with institutions and started being able to subordinate my feelings and rage that I perhaps had to institutions. I'm still somewhat of a rebel. You know, I haven't had the easiest time to stay on jobs. I get on a job and I'm resenting the people, my bosses. And a lot of that has to do with perhaps my anger at my father. And again, we talking subconsciously. Consciously, I was crazy about it. Because Remember, it's hard for me to feel these feelings because here's the person that protected me from someone's going to murder me.
Right. That's fair. I think we're going down a good road.
Yes.
And
With
it's,
that, let me take a 𝐸𝒂𝒃 because I'm getting a pounding headache. I don't know whether this severe question or actually a sinus headache, but it might be.
well, it's that time. It is that time of year to where we all get a few allergies. So I think it is fair that we can take
I'm going to
a
figure it. I'm
question.
going to come back and we're going to get some work done.
Well,
We're going
yeah,
to get
I'm
it.
really interested in going down this road of Ruth, your sister Ruth. And the reason why is because I believe that this is might be one of the first times your mother gets to experience real competition in her
Yes.
home.
Wow, that is a good point. Here's a man for the first time. It's a man that's crazy about this daughter. The first one he did wasn't.
Right. In her own home, no less.
The second one, I will tell you that someone else comes up later that caught hell for my dad, but
Hmm.
virtually destroyed her. But
Wow.
she's the next. But my sister, Ruth, was the apple of my dad's eye.
Hmm. Hmm.
And even my grandmother loved her
Hmm.
on my mother's side.
She was
Very,
dark.
yeah, she was smart, ambitious, bright eyed, and would physically fight you. I mean, she was nobody, she was
Ooh.
no joke.
Mm.
And kept a pistol on up until about 2 or 3 years before she passed.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't
Now, what age did she start keeping a pistol?
well, I don't know what age she got it, but I know one thing. My brother, who was a humdinger, Oscar, put his gun on the table. My sister reached in her bag, put hers on the table.
All right now.
And I was visiting with her one time. I don't know what she was doing this right, and she showed me her pistol. So I mean, she was no joke. You know, I got a pistol in here.
Okay.
She had pulled it on several family members.
Okay.
I
She
knew
meant what
how,
she said.
huh?
I said she meant what she said.
She was no joke. She
Okay.
was no joke. And I was the little baby brother. I
I'm going to tell you, you're
never,
lucky you were her favorite.
I was a favorite, but you had to eat humble pie with her. I
Okay.
mean, she would haul off and they say haul off and slap you. I'm talking, I'm a grown man. She said, "Shut up."
How many years between you and her?
20.
20 years. So, yeah, you were a baby. You were her baby.
Yeah, I was up, and you know what? She didn't have any children.
Oh, wow. So you were,
I mean, I was getting too much in my financial situation, but you know what? I was really worried about what's going to happen to her. She had this beautiful home, and she couldn't stay in the home, and my family members were very uncooperative. So I asked a lawyer. I said, "I'm really worried about this." He said, "Don't worry. She has a trust,
hmm
and in that trust, well, anyway, I'm not gonna get too deep in it, but she provided for me. Part of the reason we're on this program today, my sister. She
well,
said,
you
"My
were her baby
huh?
boy. You
Baby
were
boy."
her baby boy, her
She
baby
said,
brother.
"All he wants to do is preach. He is not interested in money. I'm going to fix him." Yes, she was. Yeah, man, and that didn't mean that sometime I'd come to visit her. That I
Hmm.
didn't catch hell. I'd have my room in the house. She had a 7 room, 7 bedroom home, and you know she would wake me up. "What are you doing down there?"
Hmm.
Yeah, she was no joke, and I had to sit at that table like I was in a classroom and shut
But
up.
she was serious about you.
Very serious. And she would say, "You're nervous. If you would get up to something," I said, "I got to make a call. Put the phone down." Very dominating,
Okay.
very controlling.
Hmm.
I hate to say it. She was better when she was drinking. She would She was loving and very sweet when she drank this. She just wanted to kiss, hold me, hug, man. She showered me with affection. But one thing about her, she would never allow, even people in the family that hated her, she would not talk about it.
Okay.
She
Okay.
said, no, I'm not getting into that. I'm not going to get in that. I'm not going to, that's what she said. Somebody cussed her out. I ain't going to get into that. Or she might say, she is not wrapped tight.
Okay.
He was that.
Okay.
So she wouldn't allow you to go into the dark side.
That's
I
good.
later heard that she talked about me, but that's old enough. So I guess he said I got a right to talk about him. But
You
in
know
very
what? It sounds like
extraordinary, yeah,
it
she was
sounds
the
like she
mother
was
I didn't have.
protective of you, but she meant business with you. So
Oh yeah,
there.
no question about it. No question about it. And during
Mhm.
some very rough periods of my life, she came to my aid. But she meant business. She now when she lowered her voice, and now I'm not gonna put up with that. Da 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 da. You just had to listen, and I would just sit like this. And I said, "Yes, good." Yes. And she would go off on a tirade and a rage. Some of my children would have jumped out of the window because they couldn't have dealt with it. They
Well,
couldn't deal. They couldn't deal with interdiscipline. But
mm,
I had to listen to her, and she
what's
was
some
very sweet.
advice?
Huh?
What's some advice that your sister gave you that you've held on to?
Well, I had a habit of working different jobs. She said, you need to stay on one of them jobs. Got a good job, stay with it. That was regular. And I had a tendency, again, like I said, now looking back, I've worked in corrections, I've worked in mental hospital, I've done all kinds of work. And I always found something, and now I understand psychologically, that I found wrong with the boss. And it really was I probably something wrong with the authority in my life, which is dead. That
Mm,
until Coach Love died, I never was aware. People that have a hard time adjusting on jobs, on tasks, have an issue with our father. And I said, I'm crazy
mm,
about my father, but that shows you how the subconscious. So she buckled down. She worked, started out as a maid, but she was not stuck. Started out working at the Army Navy Club. Decided she was going to go back to school, become a licensed practical nurse. One of the first graduates of the of UDC, it was Federal City College, got a nursing degree, flunked the nursing exam the first time in DC, went
wow.
down to Richmond, took it again, became a registered nurse, boom, boom, rest of history. Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And
Wow.
she was a very extraordinary determined. It's interesting that two of us that were favored by our father and rejected by our mother made more progress in the world than they.
Hmm.
Very interesting.
That
Rejected
is
by mom, accepted by dad. I think because we had a strong ego. And again, my dad was a man that he believed in achievements. If you didn't have any life in you, he didn't give you very much attention. And he was crazy about good. I don't know what he was really crazy about me, but he certainly admired me. But you know, he liked people who had ambition.
mhm,
And he
mhm.
also was very big on race. And I remember at the nursing home, my sisters and them used to, the nurses would complain when your brother didn't come to visit you, blah, blah, blah. She said, he's busy. So I told her, I said, Goodney, they got me and dragged me into politics. They ain't nobody dragged you into nothing. All you and Daddy used to do is sit on the porch and talk about politics. They caught up with you. But she was very extraordinarily proud of me. Yeah.
You know what? Just seeing you talk about your sister, you just glow and you light up. So I imagine how her heart lit up when you walked into the room.
She did. And she was the mother I didn't have.
Right. I agree. You took the words right out of my mouth because I was going to say she was like your real life mother. You might say a
Run away from
second mother.
home many times and I think it was $6 from Lynchburg to Washington. And then at the last minute, I would tell her I ain't got no money to get back home, and she would torture me deeply about why you gonna do this now. I had to have a half-hour lecture, but she would give me the money. He would always give me the money.
That's good. I love it.
He was a very sweet.
So, your mother tried to kill your sister Ruth
Yes, on 2 occasions.
on 2 occasions.
Well, three. One time she tried to hit her upside the head with a hammer, a claw hammer. And had my sister not wrestled that hammer out of her hand, she would have killed my sister.
Mm.
I think
Wow.
another time she shot her, but they would fight. She would hit her. My mother was a fighter. She was physically good with her hands.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept a silver ring. I can still see that ring. And if she hit you with that ring, she would have put an impression on her head, upside your head. And it wasn't an impression to impress you psychologically. It was a physical impression. My mother was a very scary person. She could be quite violent.
Mm-hmm. How tall was your mother?
My mother was maybe 5'4".
5'4".
5'4", maybe 5. But she would actually jump on you. When you least expect, she would just leap on you and grab you by the neck.
Mm.
Yeah, she was fierce.
Yeah, she was definitely feisty. She was
Very feisty and very dangerous.
And physical.
No question about it.
Now,
yes.
Your sister, which I find this ironic, your sister was the person who stopped your father from killing your mother. So your sister Ruth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Was this before or after Ruth? Your mother tried to take Ruth's life.
This was before. I mean, this was after. But from what I understand, yes, she never bonded with her. So that's why my mother my sister Ruth had to stay with my grandmother. Because my mother just never liked her. Mm-hmm. People in the community used to warn her about how she treated her. Mm-hmm. My sister said she was,
But yet your sister saw fit to save your mother's life from your father.
Yes. And maybe my mother never forgave her for that, because she figured she had more power over my father than she did. And some of the family members trafficked in some very nasty, untrue rumors about my sister.
Mm. So don't you find it interesting that your mother would have rather be harmed by your father than be saved by your sister?
Yeah, I never thought about that. Never thought about it. Hmm. She never expressed any gratitude at all for that. She never brought it up.
Mm-hmm. How old was your sister when she saved your mom?
About 5 years old.
5 years old.
And from that point, yes, she's fine. She ran away. And from that point, that was the epiphany my dad had to stop drinking. He never drank again. He said he never drank again. He never wore a black hat. Mm. I guess that was the omen. He had the black hat and a pistol, and he was going to kill my mother.
That's something. How old was your mother? How old was your sister the very first time she tried to kill Ruth?
Oh, she was in her 20s. I don't know about the earlier part, but I want an eyewitness. She was in her 20s. She had left home. They got in an argument about something, and my mother hit her with a fist, knocked her down. And if my sister were not agile, she would have killed her. She then went for the hammer.
Wow.
And I mean,
there were 2 other times, right? Huh? There were 2 other times that your mother tried to kill.
And I don't know what these times before that I witnessed, but I knew 2 other times she shot at her and attacked her physically.
Now, were those in the 20s, or was that when Ruth was younger?
Well, I don't know. These were while I was living. I mean, I was living, but since the 20s. I don't know what happened. She never talked to me about the violence in her childhood.
Mm.
I
Okay, so
never did.
fair enough. Fair enough. You witnessed 3 times, but there very well could have been several times during your sister's younger years,
Yes,
you know, that your mother that she almost lost her life.
yes.
Mm. How old was she when she left home?
She's about 18, 19.
18, 19.
And she
Okay.
would still come back and visit. And this were the occasions, I mean, not long, and she would be attacked. I mean, she just it was very clear that she hated her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She talked very badly of her.
She talked very badly to her and
She
about
didn't
her.
think very good of any of her daughters until we get to another one. We're gonna go to the next one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we should, but I do have one question left. When Ruth would come home, did she come home to visit your mother? Did she go in the kitchen and maybe talk to your mother? How did that work?
Yeah, she would come and visit Mama. I will say she spent a lot of time with Dad, but she tried to be even. She
Okay.
visited. I mean, she still was seeking her mother's affection,
Okay. But
and
she would,
sometimes it would be tolerant. And she would give Mama money. She
okay.
would buy Mama's love,
Mm,
and then Mama would just go off. But
okay.
anything could trigger her.
Okay. So your sister, no matter how much abuse she received from your mother, she made every effort to still connect with her.
Yes,
Um,
bought
but she
her
was bonded
clothes.
to your father.
Yes,
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's move on to the next sister. What's her name?
her name is Cornelia.
Cornelia. Okay.
Now we talk about the apple of Mama's eye
Ah.
and the bane of Daddy's existence.
Hmm.
Though her name is after his mother,
Okay. And
he
this is sister
suspected
number
that
three.
he suspected that she was not his daughter
Hmm.
and treated her accordingly very badly. I understand he made passes at her,
Okay.
thought she was not his child.
Okay. Sister number three, child number four.
Right.
And say her name again.
Cornelia.
Cornelia. And she
Name
is named after.
my dad's mom.
Okay. Was your dad's mom named Cornelia
Yes,
specifically?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Wow. And what did she look like? What did your sister Cornelia look like?
Light skinned, a few freckles on her nose, very good looking,
Mm, mm.
pretty, what black folk would call good hair.
Okay. Okay.
The traces of the Caucasian you would see in her, good looking, hippie type person, built,
Mm.
charming,
Did she
attractive
look
man.
like your grandmother at all?
No, she didn't look like my grandmother. No.
Mm. Did she look like anyone on your father's side of the family?
I didn't know all of them. No, she didn't look like any of them.
Okay. All
A
right.
slight, there's a slight resemblance to my grandmother.
Okay.
But
Because
my mother,
your grandmother on your father's side was um had a white father and a black
right,
mother. Okay.
right,
Okay. Fair enough.
yeah.
Let's talk about your sister.
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you, I don't have great fond memories of her, and
Hmm.
I will share that. Well, there are several things. First, she was Mama's favorite.
Okay.
She wouldn't allow you to say anything critical about Mama. She's the one that wrote Mama's letters. She handled Mama's business. Mama was crazy about her. She
Oh,
would nurture her. She would take care of her daughter. Her daughter and me grew up together, and she would come and stay with my sister. Well, I hate to say this. She was basically a very promiscuous person.
mm,
Very promiscuous person.
hmm.
And Mama disapproved that. Well, my mom had a standard of morals. She didn't approve. She couldn't bring her boyfriends or nothing around there, but she respected her husband Gus. But yeah, my sister was quite a person. But she
Okay.
was my mother's favorite. And my mother thought she was probably the most intelligent ones of us. And my sister at one time, I guess, was pretty bright. Never finished school, and that was kind of the foundation for her envy and jealousy of some of the rest of my sisters.
You want to know something? I noticed that your mother is drawn to the children that tend to go down the wrong path. She was
That is
drawn.
a good. That's a good. That's a good analogy.
Mhm,
That is a good analogy. The child that wanted to straight and narrow, she wasn't drawn to, because
mhm.
probably her fantasy was to be like that.
Well, sometimes people like and enjoy the company of people who make them feel better about themselves.
Yes, yes,
And she was probably drawn to help them because she could
yes,
solve those kinds of problems.
yes.
And they needed her.
And yeah, and she took care of business. She did negotiations. She was my mother's trusted person. Mama would get her to write letters. She would always extol her intellect, that she was very smart, and she was always good in math. And I will say my sister was very talented. And had she been given the opportunities, she probably would have achieved as much as my sister Ruth. But she didn't have the relationship with my dad. And again, I'm emphasizing this father figure thing.
Hmm.
The children of my family that had a good relationship with my dad achieved.
I
Those who
see.
didn't were what lacking, and they couldn't make it.
I just think it is very interesting about your mom's attraction to difficulty. Your dad was attracted to um, savvy,
Yes,
okay? And your mom was seemed to be attracted to dereliction.
yes, that's a very good way of putting it. It's absolutely
Hmm.
yes, she was.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Um, your sister was promiscuous. She had a husband.
Had a husband,
And how many children did she have?
only one,
Only one.
and
Only.
God is painful to say that we don't. It's pretty sure from what I heard that child is not my. Oh, I'm not going to be able to come back to that home. That was not her father's child. That's
I see.
her husband, her that she was married to, was not a child.
Okay. But he raised her, right?
Yeah, but he was pretty suspicious because I think he was impotent and he knew that he couldn't conceive children. From what I know,
How how much older was he than her?
he was maybe 2 or 3 years older than her, but I think
Okay.
he was either injured in the war or something had happened to him.
Okay.
He was in World War II. He was at Normandy when they invaded the the French came into the beach. He's constantly get drunk and tell you when he stormed the what Pork Chop Hill or one of those places.
Mm, mm.
So he was a war veteran.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. So he knew he couldn't have children or really strongly felt that he could not have
Yeah.
children. And that's why he just felt that your
My sister was very
no,
promiscuous.
she would be your cousin. Your cousin, it was a female, it was a girl. Is that correct?
Yes,
That it
my niece,
wasn't his daughter. You
it's
okay?
niece, my niece. Yes,
No, that's right. It will be your niece. You know what? These ages trip me up. But
my niece.
did you grow up with your niece, or
Yeah,
how did that?
very close, very close. She grew up. She spent a lot of time with us. In difficult times, she stayed with us. I'm very close, and I'm so pained to talk about this because these are all the family secrets, as John Bradshaw talked about. The secrets, the shame that binds us. So I'm revealing family secrets. Now, I was not my sister's Cornelia's favorite. She didn't like me very much. I guess because I was allied with Daddy and Mama didn't like me. And she said something very cruel to me. Well, let me just share this, and I get to get the prejudice out of the way. So my father had passed, and she took over the arrangements of the funeral. So I said, look, I'm going to be late getting to the funeral. Get you hold the funeral up. And she didn't. So I never really saw my father at the funeral. And so that was the first thing. The second thing, she's very close to Mama. I went for my brother's funeral, and she said, you know, not prompted, she looked at me, she said, Mama told me to take care of Oscar. And she said she didn't understand you. So I was, I was very hurt. Why would you tell me that at the death of my brother, whom I was my mother's favorite, I was not close, you took care of him, and you abided by Mom and taking care of him? I wouldn't have hurt somebody. So you know what I did? And this is not right. I'm not going to justify anything when I do wrong. She called me before, said she was dying, and asked me if she wanted to see me before she died. And I'd heard the privilege of seeing me. I wasn't ill, and I didn't go to see her, and I didn't go to her funeral.
Okay.
Not saying that's right. It's not. I ask God forgive me. But
what do you think she wanted to say?
Just to see, other family members say, I want to see you before I'm going. I'm going. My brother Oscar told me I want to see you. Yes.
Okay. And it sounds like your family was, pitted into teams.
Yeah.
Mama's people and Daddy's people.
That's exactly what happened. And in fact, Mama saw, we get to the rest of them, she didn't particularly care for us getting together.
Right.
You could say, what are y'all doing? Freaking off? You get 2 or 3 of you huddling. She was very suspicious of that, which is reminiscent of the plantation. This is what I keep saying. There are African Americans, some of them intellectuals going to be listening to this program, and we're so quick to blame our people. I want to understand what happened. It's sad to be enraged by your people, not understand why they're in condition. Now, I could be enraged. I told you honestly, I'd be the first one to admit that I have to go to the mourners bench for my sister. That was not right. I'm not going to say it, but so we're getting an opportunity to examine me too, and I'm obviously not healed because I wouldn't tell you that that's right. And I'm trying to get over, but I wasn't emotionally and spiritually capable of going to a funeral. Because she had stabbed me in the chest with this pain I already had. And I knew that I was not her favorite brother, her least favorite. And that she saw, she was kind of part of the prosecution team of me. And she made it plain that 𝐸𝐿 was her favorite brother. And that she was following instructions of my mother to take care of him.
Okay.
And she closed it out by saying, Mama didn't understand you. Mama said she didn't understand. So why in the hell would you reiterate that to me when I already was in the pain of not really being close to my mother? So she did that to hurt me. She could be very vindictive and very mean. And she could be very jealous. And she did a lot of destructive things to people in the family.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm so sorry that she hurt you that way. And I see that you're still working through your decision.
Yes.
Not to go to her funeral.
Yes. And not to even go to her sick bed. And again, I ask God to forgive me. I'm wrong. I'm going to tell you, I don't recommend that for anybody. You all learn from my mistake. See, I'm one of these guys who won't go out around and preach and tell you I'm saintly. No, I'm not. I'm ain'tly, not saintly, but at least will admit. The great person, one who can admit that wrong and error, and ask people to understand it and ask God to forgive and seek forgiveness. I will never tell you this, but breaking ties with your family and older sister is wrong. but I'm sharing with you how I felt and how I acted.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. And so you were born and you were put on the wrong side
Right.
of the on the other team, I'll say.
Yes.
But I'll remind you of this. You were originally on your mother's team. Originally.
I'm going to tell you, in retrospect, I consciously didn't want to be on her team.
Mm.
And the real reason, as I grew into more into my mind, everybody that I saw on her team were losers.
Okay. Well, I could see that from your perspective,
Yeah.
actually.
So they were frivolous. They had no interest in things that I had interest, intellect. They were given to good times and frivolity, and I didn't like that. And then I saw my brothers, who were close to my mother, basically being destroyed,
Mm-hmm.
over pampered. My brother Oscar over pampered, just babied. She attempted to baby my brother Thomas. He resisted. And the more and more she grew to be affectionate toward, more and more I resisted her. Well, coupled with my coming into my mind. So I guess it just became an explosive situation for her.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
could see why she would tolerate me. She was fit to be tied. Who is
And
this?
so do you think she felt rejected by you?
I think she did.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look in retrospect, I did reject her subconsciously because I didn't want to be the product that I saw her producing. I became consciously aware of where my brother was at,
Mm-hmm.
and some of my other siblings, and I didn't like the destiny they were going.
Okay. Hmm. That's fair enough. And how did your sister's life turn out? Did she, um, where did she end up working?
She worked as a maid at a women's college. In fact, it's funny. I was in a judge's chambers discussing a case I was being sued by someone. And so I said, I'm from Lynchburg. I wouldn't compromise in the case. So I told him, I'm from Lynchburg. He said, my wife went to Randolph-Macon Women's College. I said, my sister was a maid at Randolph-Macon Women's College. So
Mm.
Cornelia worked at Randolph-Macon Women's College. Then she later on retired from school. She was a janitor. She worked far, far beneath her calling because she was a very smart lady. Never
Mm.
worked on her potential and was somewhat jealous of my sister Ruth. Ruth was very ambitious and driven. My sister was driven to have fun, sex, rock and roll,
Okay.
but did go to church.
Okay.
They didn't church.
That is a heck of a sentence that your sister worked far below her potential.
And kind of romanticized it. And
Really?
yes, she did. She did. I mean,
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
it was sort of a bragging that she didn't, you know. I think and to those of us who were smart and given, she was kind of happy that she didn't. Because she would throw off on two other sisters that we'll discuss later that were aspiring for education, and she looked down upon them. She did what she could to discourage them and to actually sabotage them.
Hmm. She ultimately bragged that she could do way more than she chose to do.
Right. And she would always say that she was a mathematical genius. And from what I understand, I didn't know her that in her scientific, but I heard she did very well in math.
Wow.
So she showed, well, I know what she chose. It was kind of thrusted upon her with the damage that she dropped out of school. And she just wanted to be good looking, work first, and she was an excellent cook. Now I have to tell you this, that's one thing she could cook. She was an excellent cook. The fried chicken. I'm getting hungry thinking about her chicken. She could cook. And
So
a
she was a
very
good-looking
excellent
woman.
housekeeper. Huh?
She was a good-looking woman who kept a clean house, who could cook.
And had several men.
Mhm. Mhm. It sounds, a lot that is not uncommon for a woman to value herself off of those things. I'm good looking. I keep a clean house. And not only can I get a man, but I can keep a man.
And could get several right up to her death. She had a man.
Right. It- So if you look at kind of what some women would brag about or what's valued in femininity sometimes, I see why your sister might take pride in those things,
Yes.
you know, because a woman's mindset, even today, um, you'll hear men say that your earning potential is not necessarily attractive to me,
Right.
you know.
So this is brings us up. That's in Spanish culture, it's called a Padana Madonna complex. But I think it's prominent with us too. The
Hmm.
Padana is still pushed among us.
Okay.
The big earrings, the the eyelashes, all heightened super sexual. People talk about hyper masculinity, but there's also toxic femininity that's not
Yeah.
discussed.
Well, I don't know if it's not discussed. I discuss it.
You're a rare breed. I mean, anybody can interview Imam Alfred Mohammed and
Oh,
talk to him is a very excellent interview. Now, I mean, most people can't interview me. I'm sure they don't have the ability. Most analysts couldn't do. I had gone through piece by piece with analysts. Most analysts couldn't have. So, in fact, that these questions you ask, those guys, hey, give me my money back. I paid you all for money when I didn't have it. Yep, these analysts owe me money. They should give it to Coach Love.
oh. Well, thank you.
We got big things going to happen for us. I know it. Van Zant ain't got nothing on you.
Oh,
We gonna yell and we gonna fix some folk.
you know what? We gonna look. Put in your work, though. That's the truth. You've got to do the work.
Got to do the work. And
You
that's
got.
what a lot of people want to know why they are like the same place mentally that they were 30 years ago. Because you haven't done any goddamn, excuse my life, no work. You got to work on yourself. You got to
Mhm.
discuss yourself. Even if you get self-help book and you can't waddle and complain.
Mhm. Mhm. You
I have
know.
family members like that. They just complain. And we'll get ready to go. We're gonna go to the next one. We'll be
We're going to
going
go
to.
to the next one. I do want to say this, though. One of the most important things that I discovered about being an adult is that you have to learn to parent yourself.
Yes, you do. You do. You do. You really, really do. I think we're gonna put this right to the charger. I'm gonna hold it. And how are we doing with you can still see me, right?
I can still see you. I can
Okay.
still see you.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your next sister.
The next sister is Ophelia, who
Othelia was born directly after Corrine.
my brother Thomas.
Okay, so we have a
But there are
son
two, I
there.
think there are two children in between that passed. I don't know that birth order. But Ophelia is the next one.
Othelia's the next one, but she has a living brother in between
Right.
her and your
Yes,
Corrine.
yes. That was
Okay.
Thomas. Thomas was before her, preceded her.
Okay, wonderful,
Let me
wonderful.
see. Let me see. Did Oscar precede her? I can't remember. I I don't get I get this. I won't hold me to it. It might have been Oscar before, but I know she's the next girl.
She's the next girl, and I'll tell you this: we can correct the record if need be. But where they fall in the line of children is kind of important.
It is, and here's what is very interesting. There were children that my mother hated,
Hmm.
and there were others that she just neglected.
Okay, that's
And
great.
my next sister, Ophelia, was just plain neglected
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and had a kind of pitiful side to her because she was nurtured by my mother or given attention by my father.
Mm. That's a
So
rough.
she was, my mother had this system. She had some she favored, some she manipulated. One or two of them she would be her manipulative, and some she just hated.
You want to know what? Your sister just sounds like she was put on the bench, put on the
She was
sidelines.
definitely put on a bench. She never really got, I just see her now. And I know before she passed, she was choked. She couldn't talk. And I'm
Mm.
sure subconsciously, the complete neglect, the complete lack of love just really damaged her.
Mm. Wow.
But
Wow.
quite a sweet person. The first person to buy me a pair of shoes was her. Very
Oh.
sweet. She was the sweetest. She also liked me. I was not as attached to her as perhaps I could, and some things I don't want to talk about now here about with her. But I would say this, and well, we gone into it. She had children that she just neglected. She had a daughter. She had a son.
Okay.
He died. Then she had a daughter, my niece, one of my favorite nieces.
Okay.
And she just think like the girl was born in the house. She dropped her just like you would drop a cat, and she got disappeared, got in the wind,
Mm.
never to come back again.
Okay. So she dropped her child at your mother's house?
Yes.
Mm.
Now
And
she
just
had a
never.
child before that who died, and she was a girl. The boy was okay. She had no bond. And she's an interesting person because she also followed my mother's pattern. Similarly, she liked her
Right.
boys. Except when she got to the last, she got a little daughter. I know she probably cussed me at goddamn uncle of mine, telling my mother's secret. But that daughter, Kim, was her favorite of
I
the
see.
daughters. She had two daughters. One, my niece Diane, that she had the other. She completely neglected Diane and was hostile to Diane
Okay.
and pretty much hated her.
Did all the children have the same father?
My sister Ophelia, no,
Yes. Okay.
no. She had children by several different men,
Okay. How far are the children apart?
probably a couple of years apart.
A couple of years apart. And did she raise any of the children?
Yes, she did. She raised everybody except for Diane, her oldest daughter.
Okay.
And another mystery in my family, I never know why my mother told my niece Diane to go back with her mother. She didn't even know her mother. Our mother had no interest in it. That was a cruel act on the part of my mother. Really, very cruel.
How old was your mother?
She was in her 60s, but she was able to take care. Diane was like, it was like throwing an animal out, and I'm not an animal, but here's a young lady, never knew her mother, had no bond with her mother, and you throw her out to go and live with your mother, which your mother immediately rejected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
And
I
how
think
old was Diane?
Diane was like 14, 15 years old. She was homeless. And when
Mm.
my daddy found out about it, he told her, come on back home. This is after my mother had died. And she came back home. Because
Okay.
my mother and dad treated her like that she was that daughter. That daughter. And so Diane, God knows I'm sorry, Diane, you're seeing this program. But I have to tell the truth. But Diane and I are close. She's one of the few relatives I still feel a real bond to.
Mm-hmm. How close to your mother's death did she put Diane out?
About a couple of years. I had left home. I left home really by the time I was 17 years old
Mm-hmm.
and lost touch with home. I think I would call my sister Ruth, but I was so pained by what had happened. I'd lost touch with people. I didn't want any. I followed the pattern of my older brother Joe. I wanted nothing to do with them at all.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
would periodically call, but I was just as the old saying, I was too through.
Two through. Now, Diane was 14 when she
Yeah,
got put out.
yeah. That put. I think about 15. He got pregnant with him too. So she
She got
came back. Yeah, very industrious young lady, very bright young lady. It's sad that she never really fulfilled her potential.
the reason
Never
why
was
I
given.
ask those questions is because sometimes I listen to the stories about your mother. At the same time, I hear something different, and I wonder if your mother had Diane leave for her own good.
I no, I don't think that was. I don't think. You know what? I think by that point, I really think my father. I think once he was sober, I never heard any reports of him being acting sexually inappropriate to his children.
I wasn't necessarily thinking about your father. I'm thinking about the atmosphere. A a girl has to be watched.
Oh yeah, that might have been. I know that. I still think Diane. Well, to go back to a mother who gives you no attention is a very dangerous situation. So I still think Diane would have been much safer there. That I
Mhm.
disagree. Once I found out about it, I was very pissed off, and even
Mhm.
today I'm pissed off about it.
Mhm. Mhm. You know,
I
I
think that my mother was exacting. I think also she was exacting revenge because Diane had grown very close to my dad, and
mm,
now just looking back, I think she was exacting revenge.
could be, could be. At that age, a lot of things occur.
Yes.
Girls tend to get a little bit sassy.
Yes. But she didn't, from what I know, there was no real justification for that. Now I don't
Doesn't
know. I haven't heard anything, but what I know of, I don't think that was the case. But again, I could be wrong. I'm not going to be adamant about saying that, but that could have been. I won't rule it out. But I never heard any reports of that or her being disrespectful. Yeah, she was.
well, it doesn't have to be wrong or right, is what I'm trying to say. Just hear me
Yes,
out just a little bit. It's not wrong or right. It's um, where the boundaries lie for whatever reason.
hmm
Okay, girls start to fill out. Um, we start to, use feminine products. We start to get noticed by the boys in um, the neighborhood. There are things that you are invited to that you might want to go to that perhaps you're in danger for going to. Just the atmosphere around you itself, along with the person, they begin to change.
yeah,
A big
and I heard you, but the atmosphere with her mother was even worse.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Because her mother at this time is drinking. She has all kinds of
Mm.
men around. She is a very unstable person.
Mm. And then after your mother's death, your she'll be your niece. Is it your
Yes.
cousin? Your
Neat.
niece. She ends up coming back home.
Yes.
Hmm. And she finished being raised by your
By
father.
my father. Yes.
So she feels more like your sister.
Yes. Yes.
She feels more like your sister. And how did she end up leading her life? Did she have kids?
She has a son.
She has a son. She has a
She
son.
was very much different than her mother, owned a house. Yeah, she bought a home, worked a job, very good mother, very stable person.
That's
I
good.
believe if she had been got my sister, I don't know whatever happened to those jewelry, but I know in the will my sister wanted all her jewelry and fur coats to go to her. She was
Oh,
favored by my sister. I don't know whatever happened to whether that stuff got stolen or what, but my
okay.
sister had an extensive fur and jewelry collection.
And when you say your sister, do you mean your sister Ruth?
Ruth, yes, I do.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Just checking. All right. So she had a beautiful life. Did she marry?
Never.
Okay. So, and by she, I mean Diane. Did Diane marry?
That no, Diane never got married. Diane never really had a very much of what I know a love life. She had this child. She worked a job. She did buy a house. She lived a life.
And what's her education level?
I think she did. Diane finish high school. She probably finished high school. If she did, that's all she has in high school education.
Okay. And was she um your father liked brilliance. Was she brilliant?
She was witty,
She was witty.
witty, very witty, nosy. That's my niece. I love her.
All right.
Nosy, a family historian.
Oh, good.
If she ever heard this tape, she said, "Now I remember that." And she might be right. I, I don't know. I don't know how some of these people will be. And you know what I have to say to them? I really cannot be concerned. I want this for posterity. I hope your children's children will listen to this and get a better
Right.
understanding from a trained member of the family that knows very much the historical and socio psychological history of our family as it relates to the families of Africans in the Americas.
You want to know something? I think that what you're doing is so beautiful for us as a culture, but really for your family because you are the last child,
Yes.
you know, and not many people have this history. It's almost like a time capsule
Yes.
that at any point they could go back and listen to, and um, whether they agree with it or they don't agree with it, they could mark with their understanding based off of what you are documenting for them.
Yes. Yes. And that's how we're going to put this in a book form. And I plan to put footnotes to it, not so much for that, but for the scholarship that we're hoping to develop out of this. We're
Mhm.
hoping to develop an institute that would study this. See, I'm tired of African Americans always complaining about white. It's time at one of these historical black colleges that there's an institute set up, financed by us, to study family life. Who should be more on restoration of family, first for ourselves and for everybody but us?
Mhm.
Once we get that kind of messianic mission, we'll get out of this idea. This is white space, black space. This America's our space, period.
Mhm.
We'll
Mhm.
stop operating as outsiders. We'll operate as insiders. But
Very
once we
much
go
so.
inside ourselves, then we won't be, oh, I'm in someone else's space.
Mhm. Mhm. And you want to know something? When you share your family history and your secrets, um, you give other people courage to share theirs,
Yes,
and it really is freeing when you look at it in a historical context,
yes.
not through the eyes of shame, but how does this occur in the big picture of it all?
Yes, yes. And they say shame binds you. It actually becomes uh, a hormone. It's a stress hormone.
Hmm.
And that's why African American men in particular are given to prostate cancer. And that's why African American women are given to breast cancer. Those
Hmm.
reproductive organs are affected by this shame, particularly
Okay.
sexual shame, and it stresses there. So the human being is as we talked about, mind, body, soul. They're all interactive. So think you hiding this? Well, it's going to come out in your drinking. It's going to come out in your drugging. It's going to come out in your sexing. It's going to come out in the eating disorder. what's going to come out of the disease of your body. So you
Mhm.
can't run. I ain't telling nobody my business. I don't talk to nobody about my business. Well, everybody knows your business because it's all in your symptoms.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, and if people study close enough, they know what your symptoms are. You know you come from this. And why don't we all just admit that we have been damaged and repair ourselves? It's a shame to be continuously in this condition, and it's a shame that we have not worked on our condition. That's what, if nothing else, I would love to put a book. I'm reading this greatly. I'm going to take the course with this guy. He's teaching the course. The art of knowing, the dimension of openness in
Mhm.
advanced therapy. And we have to be open. We're never going to heal ourselves. You can brag, you can live with the biggest white neighborhood you want, you can be in great places. Webster Grove, which is near St. Louis, I remember as a child growing up. 16 in Webster Grove. Well, you know, all these spaces, maybe, you know, by other people, create your own spaces. But you first got to create space inside of your soul.
Yeah.
Tell yourself that you deserve the best life and be willing to heal and be willing to admit, yeah, I'm flawed. I'm not inherently flawed, but I'm
Mhm.
flawed.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
tell people, a saint I ain't
A saint I ain't. But you want to know what? You get better every day.
every day and never satisfied with yesterday. Won't be satisfied till I get up the hill.
All right. I love it. Yes and amen to that. Let's talk about your next sister.
The next sister is Yvonne.
Okay.
Yvonne is a tragic figure, very
Mm,
bright, that Mama didn't really love her. I know she might have thought in her other stuff she loved her. Mama used her as her manipulative
mm.
and to do her dirty work. And as a result, my sister was assigned to pretty much torture myself and my other two sisters. So she
Okay.
would
When you
carry
say your
news about,
sister, which sister is that? Which
well,
sister?
see, I have two younger sisters. They're the last of the two sisters, but this sister was a pretty intelligent person, no ambition, um, a dependent person,
Okay.
and a person that's pretty much stayed at home. She got married, she had several children, but you know she wasn't very motivated. She I don't. She's a difficult one to analyze. It's very pain because I'm still living a lot of raw emotion. She just passed a few months ago,
Oh, I'm so
and
sorry.
well, I was on my way to her funeral, and just I can see motion. I couldn't handle it, or I don't know. It's a complex. I don't know whether I want to even talk about that. But she had been very mean to me growing up. She
Hmm.
manipulated my mother, and my mother would use her to do her dirty work.
And when you say dirty work, what? Give me an
Well,
example of
she would
what
take
you
my
say dirty.
mother to witch doctors. She would
Oh,
actually enhance my mother's feeling how bad the other three of us two were. She echoed whatever my mother believed. She was her enabler, her enhancer of her psychological torture of us, the
okay.
last two of us. The last two of us had it. My mother, well, I started being a favorite. The other two girls she really hated.
So she validated whatever your mother thought
Yes,
was.
yeah. Out of a manipulation. I don't think it was genuine. I
Hmm.
don't really believe it was genuine. I'll say this. I don't think she was genuine in this. I think she was a manipulator.
Hmm.
And she was very, very manipulative and lazy.
Perhaps it was easier for her to get what she want by
That's
validating your mother.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
I see. Okay.
She had a better opinion of me than I had of her. I have to say that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm
Mm.
being somewhat emotional. But
How did your mother feel about her?
I don't really think she really loved her. She talked with her. I think she was somebody she could manipulate. And she thought was stupid and that she was manipulative and malleable and would do her biddings.
Hmm. Loved her, didn't respect her, maybe?
I don't know whether she loved her, but I know she didn't respect her.
Didn't respect her. Thought that she was a useful
Person,
tool,
yes, yes.
like a minion.
Basically, she thought she was a fool.
A useful fool, kind of like
Useful.
a minion.
Yes, a minion. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Not somebody she had affection for like Cornelia. She had affection for Cornelia. She had affection for Oscar. She didn't have affection for her. Well, they said she was sympathetic to her because she had romantic fever and she was nurturing to her. I think that was excuses. But I really didn't see a genuine love for her. She was one of those children that she was not in the hated category. She was not in the neglected category. She fitted in a very special category. And she
Mm-hmm.
was a very manipulative person to get what she wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and very selfish and self-centered.
Mm. Did she have
Well,
children?
her nickname was Weasel.
Oh,
Yeah,
who gave her that nickname?
I don't know, but it kind of fit.
Wow. Mm. That's hard. That's
Yeah.
hard.
So,
Did she
like
have
I said,
children?
huh?
Did she have children?
Yes,
How many?
she had. Well, let's see. I see her who ended up in a mental institution. Then she had Rosalind, who became a social worker. Uh, then Sheila, who became a nurse. And she had another daughter named, uh, let's see, Vanessa. Then there
Mm-hmm.
was Vivian. And then there is Nanette, which is her darling that's in England now.
Mm-hmm.
And loved her. And that was her favorite. And she also was a very manipulative person with her children.
Okay. Learn from her mother.
Learned her lessons well
Okay.
and would go to the highest bidder.
Okay. So in total, how many children did she have?
Let's see, she had about 6 children.
Wow. Wow. So she created a competition for her love.
Yes. And that's right. That's right. I guess that was one reason I didn't go to the funeral. I just, I just didn't want to see his replication.
Okay. So,
He want, and yeah, and I must say, and this is my fault again, because she was warm towards me in her life. It was not. I just didn't feel the closest to her.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I felt bad that I didn't have the maturity. But I don't know. I don't lie about people. If I didn't like you in life, I'm not going to go to your funeral. I may hurt somebody, but that's not the way I am. And
It didn't
some,
feel genuine for you.
pardon me.
It didn't feel genuine.
No, he didn't. I tried to. I got my ticket, then I just canceled. I know
Mm-hmm.
her nieces. My nieces said, "Why didn't you come to my mother's funeral?" Well, I don't know. I didn't feel it. And you know what? To be all honest, my sister lived right in Washington, near my sister Ruth, and never came to her funeral. Another
Mm.
thing, my sister asked her to help her out, and she wouldn't help her out. I mean, so I didn't. You know, I'm not a phony. I didn't feel very much for her. I don't think she felt anything for anybody but herself.
And by you having so much affection for Ruth, when Ruth asked her for help, when she didn't help her, that probably really frustrated you.
Yeah, and then my sister helped her daughters to finish school. Helped one of her daughters, to become a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I mean, I just, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to go. In fact, I think one of them thought I should conduct the funeral, but I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
have done it. I mean, it's just I didn't have the feelings for her. God forgive me.
Mm. Well, I understand that. You were being authentic, isn't it?
Yes,
you know, not right or wrong, just authentic.
Yes.
Hmm. And what did your sister do for a living?
Oh, in the end, she worked at Head Start, but she basically didn't work. I mean, she had kind of lived off the dole. I think before she passed out, years before she worked at Head Start as an aide or something. But a person not of much ambition and just, a person that didn't develop at all.
Were all of the children by the same father?
No, she had them by three different men.
Mm. Did she marry?
She was married twice, yes. To
Okay.
Robert Davis, she had four, let's see, Isaiah, Rosalind, Sheila, and Vanessa. That's four, right?
Yeah.
And then she had two more children by different people.
Okay.
And the apple of her eye was her baby girl, who was in England.
I see.
Yeah.
And what is she doing in England?
I think she's doing some type of administrative secretarial work there. Very smart. Said one of the reasons she went to England because she saw her uncle left home at an early age, and she just wanted to explore. She knew I was an explorer. I didn't stay in Lynchburg. I didn't. I don't think I spent 2 days in Lynchburg since I left to get
Wow.
told probably been. So the fact is, I was traveling. I was living around been out of the United States, in the United States. She kind of wanted to pattern herself after me. In fact, she told me that.
Oh,
And
that's
I'm
wonderful.
pained. I am pained that it's really painful because I have feelings for my nieces and nephews, but I don't have really much feelings for my some of my sisters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, life's not perfect and it's not going to always be ideal.
No, it's not.
You know, you grew up with your sister and there's decisions that they made that affected you. Um, and you're allowed to have, you know,
Yes,
real
yes,
feelings about those.
it is. And I think we have to be honest. We have to really, and I'm hoping that these kind of discussions will take place. I hope that people can facilitate them, that we'll get people like you and our families. Let me tell you something. More than talking about President Trump, more than talking about Kanye West, more than talking about all the heady news line, we should be talking about what's going on with us
Mm-hmm.
psychologically. Those
Mm-hmm.
who want to be writers, they should be studying this work to understand better what's going on in their own lives. And as I said, most of us are given to rage and anger. Rage is a cover emotion. Anger is a cover emotion for emotions that deeply wound a wounded person, whether it be hurt, just a lot of different emotions.
Mm. There is there's an emotional chart. I should get a picture of that. Do you are the emotion wheel and what's at the bottom of it?
Yes, I like to see that.
Okay. Um, so she had 6 kids. You didn't go to her funeral.
No.
Um, you found her to be very manipulative.
Yes.
And I was about to bring up this point, and more than any of the children, listening to you talk about her reminds me of adverse childhood experiences. Not that everyone else didn't, end up with some kind of ACEs score. Um, ACEs is how they measure your different adverse childhood experiences, and you can end up with a score anywhere from 0 to 10 of the base ACEs, and it's how you're being affected as an adult.
Will you
But
send me that? Sit, text me that information because I'd really like to study it.
absolutely, as a matter of fact, one we air on the ACEs Matters channel. So
Okay.
yeah,
Send me
yeah,
that. definitely come and watch it. And you all should really follow Coach Love. And
Yeah.
like this. Well, the bloggers
Like
say,
and share. Like and
like
share.
and share and comment.
Yes.
Help the Facebook. I mean, not Facebook, YouTube algorithm.
There you go.
So we
It
want to get
does.
this. I believe this program is going to be eventually up to 500,000 and 600,000. We're healing African American. This is more important than all the textbooks people want to write, all the begging we want to beg white folks to give us jobs. If we'll heal, we will be able to demand of ourselves that we have our own institution. We will demand of the best of ourselves and our own potential.
You know what, when we have an opportunity to talk about this history in a very specific way, it's one thing when you see a movie that's made up, but it's another thing when you really examine the history step by step.
Yes, 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 yes.
Uh-oh, am I keeping you up late?
Well, you know what? This material is very, very tiring at this point, and I guess it's I'm feeling like fleets of anger and angst and everything because I mean this is material, and I have feelings towards some of these people that are not the best. No,
Well, I have
we got,
a question. What sister are we on?
we are on the fifth sister. We have only two more to go.
Well, let us save them for later. We
Okay,
can do a part two.
okay,
We can do a part two. So I'll create another link. I want to give them their just dessert at the same time. Um, I want you to be fresh enough to really explain their piece and their part because they mean so much. Each
and they
one of
and
these.
they are the last three of us are very, very interesting. And I tell you, it's genius is skipped, and now you have people two. The other two are very brilliant, but very tortured and very demented people emotionally.
Mm, mm.
So it's very important to see those two people as people. There's a sister that's next to me is perhaps as brilliant. She may be a stage of the family. It would probably be Joe. It would
Okay.
be me and this sister.
Okay.
Instead, I go along with her. But she's the next sister to me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant, underachiever, reads thousands of books, but is a very angry, very bitter
Mm-hmm.
person.
And what's her name?
Claudette Arlene.
Claudette Eileen.
Now, I get. Let's finish these two people out. They
No, 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 no. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why. We're gonna pick up at Claudette Eileen
and
because
Loretta Dolores. She's
ooh,
older, and then Claudette is the youngest. Claudette's next to me,
okay. Loretta Dolores is where we will pick up,
and
and we're
Claudette Arlene.
and Claudette Arlene. Um, we will pick up there, um, and it'll be good because I want to after we um, finish the sisters, I would like to just kind of do a quick walk through all of the children together.
Okay,
And I think that would be really good.
I
So
think so.
that'll give us the space to do that.
Yes,
Okay?
thank you.
Sound good? Do you have any parting words for our audience?
You know what I think at this point, I'm going to pray.
Ah,
I think that's the appropriate to go to the throne. Almighty God, we ask you for for your mercy, and we seek your forgiveness for our errors that we have made towards ourselves and towards our family. Especially forgive your servant. God, let this be a lesson to our people, to heal our people. As it was the intent not to vent, not to complain, but to give you the glory that we have survived this. And God, we pray that we overcome the wreckage of our past, reconcile with it, and see it as a sign for the world, first our world, and the world beyond. It is our hope that you will continue to bless Coach Love and her great work. Bless each and every person that's listening to this broadcast. Bless those who will listen to this broadcast, that they may get a better understanding of themselves and our family. For all of my seven sisters and four brothers are represented of the types of people that America has produced. And God, we thank you that we didn't turn out to be real monsters. We thank you that we didn't become Clarence Little, who is the
Mm.
most prolific serial killer in America. But God, you know, we all of us that have come from this family are quite capable of taking revenge on the world. That's the kind of anger we have. But
Mm.
instead, we might have turned it on ourselves, but let us turn to you with love and see ourselves as hope for humanity. Amen.
Mm. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Imam. It is just a pleasure spending time with you.
Yes. A difficult hour, difficult but yet necessary. It's the
I
excision of a cancer that has been in the collective soul, particularized in me. And I thank God that He's blessed me to be able to come first, to have the experiential connection to this, but yet to have the academic connection and the faith enough to overcome this. You got it ain't enough to have the academic book knowledge. You got to have experiential knowledge,
mm-hmm.
i.e., therapy, and then number three, after you've gathered all this, but you got to have God in your life because you could go crazy or become a mad person.
Mm.
And I thank God I'm not Clarence Little. Because at points in my life, I feel like taking exact revenge on on a lot of folks.
Mm. That is never healthy. And so
No,
I'm glad.
it's not. And you know what? It's better to talk it out. But
Mm-hmm.
I hope some young man who's going through this now, who is experiencing this, some young lady who is experiencing what I have experienced and what my sisters have experienced, can become better persons and can be redeemed by my sharing of my experience. And I say this to the audience, and I say this to my family. This is not meant to hurt. This is to heal. And where I erred, I will tell you I erred. I will never tell you not going to your sister's funeral, not attending to your family is right. It's wrong. And God
Mm-hmm.
forgive me and ask the audience to forgive me. And I said it with sincerity.
And I just thank you so much for sharing, Imam. You you are a gift, and sharing your life with us is a gift. And please know how much we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
I appreciate you and I appreciate your precious audience.
Thank you.
God bless you. As you would say, bye bye for now.
Yes, that is exactly what I would say. And audience, um, that is what I'm going to say in this moment. Um, it is not too often that we have the opportunity to sit at the feet of someone with such rich history and firsthand knowledge of this aptitude, who's going to be so vulnerable and so transparent and share the realities of life, and quite frankly, the realities of our history. And so I really do thank you for joining us and investing time with us in this series. And come on back, continue this series with us. We are certainly on a journey together. But at this point, I must say, bye-bye for now.
God bless you.
You're winning. You're winning. You're winning.